Well, hello neighbors, John, your whiskey neighbor here. I thought I would review another interesting bourbon for you today. We're going to take a look at something from Wyoming Whiskey, but this is a single barrel pick, a private stock pick for the Kensington Wine Market. Catch you after the break. Well, thanks for coming back from the intro. As I said, today we're going to take a look at a pretty special bourbon. I happened to be down in Calgary, oh boy, maybe it was last November, and the good folk there walked me around and liked to pour samples of a few things, and they had this Wyoming Whiskey. It's a private stock barreling, so it's a single barrel, and I believe they went down to the Wyoming Whiskey Distillery, and the website mentions a fellow Sam Mead, a distiller there, usually pulls a few barrels for private stock picks. So likely they had their choice among a few barrels. All of the barrels are aged just 5 years. And the Kensington Wine Market, this is a second release. I don't know if I shared yet. This one is bottled at 53.3% alcohol or 106.6 proof. And it's the second release. I don't see number 2 on it, but I do remember when I bought it, you know, they made mention of that it was the second time they'd gone down and brought up a single barrel, a private bottling. And it says around the back, you know, it's aged for 5 years, and they got 240 bottles out of that. So it's kind of a unique whiskey. I don't know if they have any left, but we'll see what my thoughts are, and if you're interested in a higher proof bourbon. I will say, I'll look up the specific mash bill of this and put it here, but this is a wheated bourbon. So of course it's bourbon, so it's made in the US, it's higher than 51% corn. Likely this is quite a bit higher, probably around the 70% mark. But instead of rye, to get some of that flavor bite, you know, they've added wheat. So it's probably about 16% wheat, and then it'll have malted barley. And usually malted barley, you know, helps open up the grains in the mash bill and get that fermentation going. Provide some other flavors too. So let's see what this beautiful looking color and bourbon is like on the nose. You know, for only a 5-year bourbon, 5-year-old bourbon, it really has a good nose. I get right away caramel, buttery caramel, like rich, cooked even a little bit of not char, that's not quite right, but a heavier sense to that caramel taste or smell. There's some fruits going on, but I can't quite name them right now. If I were to say a fruit, it'd have to be something darker. Maybe a fig. I like the nose. As I said, it's 53.3%, so it's a little strong, but I've poured it just the way it comes. See how it tastes? First part of the palate is just more of that good sweetness, caramel, toffee. Then I think as you keep it in the mouth, or if just as you're swallowing or whatnot, then you get a little bit of the spices in it. Tough to point out the spices. It's not spicy. This is creamy, maybe a little doughy. Part of that's suggestive, I find, when I drink a wheated bourbon. If I know it's wheated, I think, oh yeah, there it is. But for me, I don't often get doughy, but I do get pretty smooth. And it's this one, the way it coats is lovely. So the sweetness goes into a little bit of spice, and then the finish is medium length. It doesn't go on forever, but quite lovely, especially for, you know, that was a sip of it at full strength. Maybe I'll try another one. Yeah. Richer this time, a little bit darker on the edge of all of that. So you take your caramel and your toffee and you cook it a little bit. So then with the creaminess, maybe you get into cooked puddings or cooked candies, that kind of thing, right? So you get that crack on the butter. Yeah, really delightful. In fact, I enjoyed it when I had a taste at the Kensington Market, and so I thought, I better pick that up. I like high proof bourbons. Then I poured it with Brad, and we liked it, but it wasn't a runaway. Now coming back to it again, I really think there's just a ton of flavor in here. I will say, it's fairly strong, and if you have a little bit of distilled water kicking around, this one can actually hold up to a couple of drops of it. That was a pretty fair amount of water. I'll let that go in. I don't know much about Wyoming Whiskey, the distillery. I think they're making quite a name for themselves, and to release this type of product at only 5 years, I think is just fantastic. I saw on the site the fellow, I said Sam Mead, who helps with the private stock picks, but I had also read, I didn't do a fact check, but I had read on another site that Steve Nally was a fellow who was a master distiller at Maker's Mark, another great wheated bourbon. So, a little water. Well, it didn't improve the nose for me. Maybe it's a little sweeter. Maybe a little fruitier. So now instead of that dark deep that I was talking about, now I can go to a lighter, like a light cherry. It's funny that now I'm getting a little more of the alcohol, which is surprising. You'd think I'd get less when I added water. Cinnamon, more cinnamon than those. But water didn't hurt the palate at all. Very clean, nicely coating. I didn't get a lot of new flavors, but it probably lengthened it out. Maybe a little vanilla now coming out that I wasn't getting earlier. So some of that, yeah. Okay, so actually in the palate, maybe it perked it up a bit. I felt it didn't help the nose today, but maybe it lengthened the palate. I would say actually there's a little bit more going on, and I think if I spent some more time with it here, maybe I'd get a few more flavors for you. Well, I just wanted to pop on and share about this special bourbon, just in case Kensington Wine Market in Calgary still has a few bottles. This is their second private bottling from Wyoming Whiskey, and this is fantastic stuff. I'm very happy that I picked this bottle up, and if you like bourbon, and especially high proof bourbon, and wheated bourbon, I was going to pour a little bit of the Weller, but I thought, well, let's just keep focused on the Wyoming. And certainly from memory, even though it's young, this has a deeper layer of flavor to it that I certainly am enjoying. So this is easily a 4-star whiskey for me. I usually rate whiskeys out of 5. In fact, this probably is pushing 4.5 stars. It's that good. This is really quality stuff, and I'm happy to have grabbed it. And since picking up, it's funny, you go down there and you're like, I've never heard of this, and they tell you a bit of the story and they give you a sip, and it's just all very good. And then coming back, I've actually seen, obviously not this particular private bottling, but Wyoming Whiskey show up on a lot of shelves. Of course, I haven't tried that, so I can't speak to their regular expressions, but I can say this private pick is top notch. Thank you for joining me. If you like what's going on, maybe leave a comment or thumb up the video. Tell me if you've had the release from Kensington Wine Market, or if you had their first one, and maybe tell me, because I've only had the second, how it differed from the second. It's nice to have good conversation. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me, and you have a great Sunday.